Welcome back to the show, Marvels. How in the heck are you? Dana and I are back for yet another episode.
We're sensing that you might be interested in learning about a little bit more, maybe a deeper dive into sensory sensitivity and what it looks like. How's that?
How many times can you use the word sense in a sentence?
Does it make sense that you sense things sensically surrounding? I'd say I went away from sense. Yeah, that's pretty good. We were talking in a different episode. We were saying like two things that Gwen and I noticed the most, like the hallmark. I made myself a little dizzy even laughing there. Oh, I'm going to enjoy that for a second. There we go. Okay, how the sort of the hallmarks of neurodivergence are cognitive, which I always see like the hamster on the wheel, the racing kind of
thinking,
and then the sensory pieces are really a cornerstone of that. And I've gotten kind of in arguments with other people about this that say that they're autistic and they don't have any sensory sensitivities. And they're like, well, look at the DSM, you can do it with. I'm like, well, is that really the case? Or are you just not really aware of what your sensitivities are? Because I think once you start paying attention, I think the first time I went online and took like an ASPE test at the time, I wasn't honest with myself. You know, I came out still looking neurodivergent, but not as far over as I am now. And things like, you know, I think things like if I heard a noise that was annoying, would it distract me? I mean, I think for anybody that would. And so I probably picked something in the middle. And now I'm like, yeah, I would want to murder somebody if I couldn't stop the noise. You know, it's a little further over. So I think that everybody has slightly different triggers. And in my experience, there tends to be one or two that predominate in each individual person. For me, the thing that'll hijack my brain more than anything is a smell that I don't like, or it's too strong and I can't get away from it. Other sensory sensitivities, I can kind of do some things about, but the smell one, I just have to, I'm out. And I've known other people that it's more like light or touch or some other sorts of things. And it kind of can vary from person to person. I think that's more often the misnomer that people don't realize and it can be something totally internal that no one else can see. And that person doesn't share that they are losing their mind. Right. So I think that's what happens when people are saying, I don't have any sensory sensitivities. And I'm like, let's dig a little into that, because you probably do if you really have all these other pieces. Right.
I feel like this is like a neurological thing, you know, and this is neurological, you know, and I have met many who have sensory issues who are not autistic. Yeah. But I have never, ever supported an autistic that doesn't have sensory issues.
Exactly.
I will say it is, for me, and when we get into and you know, this is particularly for our hidden disability people, right? Particularly for our very, you know, our verbal, smart, you know, individuals where
that have the capacity to mask more. Those variables would
they're masking.
Help you in masking.
Yep. And then when we start like peeling back the onion on sensory, that's when you're like, wow, if we don't understand the sensory system for you, we actually will not be able to do energy management. We won't right. So we in a previous episode, Dana and I spoke about energy management over time management and how that's a more effective framework to think about. But you know, if we think about this, so sensory input, sensory registration, which is different than sensory processing. It's a part of sensory processing, but the idea of how much information is coming into the body and brain. Processing meaning how does the brain make sense of that sensory input, and then output, you know, is, you know, obviously what other people tend to see in your body. But, I think working with my clients, I have come to really appreciate that we literally aren't brains in a jar walking walking robots, right? Like our sensory motor system, how our body takes in the environment and what it does with it and makes sense with it, has a very, very big role in what cognition or what you're thinking about, how you're thinking about things, and how you are able to execute things.
Yeah. And when we say sensory sensitivities, we really mean just that. So compared to neurotypicals, that neurological hyperwired, so that there are, if I were to prick your finger with the pin, how much are you feeling that, right? The average person. And so literally you're going to have more sensory connectors in the end of your skin if that's a sensitivity thing for you. You're going to have more hyper nerve tracts going to your brain if you have that sensitivity. You're going to have your brain go more than, for lack, that's my technical description of what happens in the brain.
It's very scientific.
And maybe even sort of rattle around in there and get caught in there more than, and have a harder time repressing the feeling again, right? So you can get a sensory sensitivity, and then you can get into that heightened place of meltdown or and a neurotypical is going to be able to do things to calm that down and unhook their brain from it that are automatic, that are what we call egosyntonic, meaning I can make a decision and do this consciously to unhook from this. Whereas an autistic person or even an ADHD neurodiverse person isn't going to be able to just decide to unhook from that. They're going to have to stop the source of the irritation or the sensory input, let's say. And it doesn't have to be something irritating. A big watershed moment for me was, why was I always kind of nauseated and feeling exhausted on Thanksgiving when I used to eat meat and loved turkey? As the day would go on, those smells get bigger in the house. And we would joke and say, oh my God, it makes me want to eat it so much. The smells are driving me crazy. But I would realize that I was exhausted. And it was because I kept going, and my brain couldn't not smell it intensely. And then I was just drained from it. So that by the time dinner came around, I was almost always dysregulated as a kid. And I was exhausted, and I just was let's just eat dinner and go to bed. I don't want to do this. And it was a watershed moment for me that even a good smell that I enjoyed, but the intensity was so big, and it was over such a long duration that it just exhausted me, right? When we go to Mariner baseball games, we went to one recently, and I was like, oh, I don't smell the garlic. They sell garlic fries at this.
Dana has talked about the infamous garlic fries at the Mariners.
Yes, we were finally sitting in a section that I couldn't smell it, and I could pay attention to the game better. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Oh, so that's a section you need to sit in from now on.
It's a good smell. It's just so intense. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's irritating. It can also be something that you don't notice. I'd read an article about how LED lights work and the reason they last so long. They're literally, the light isn't on all the time. They're constantly flickering on and off at a different rate than fluorescent lights do, because a lot of people know fluorescent lights bug them. LED lights go off and on at a frequency and a randomness that the human eyes and brain can't pick up consciously. But for those that are photosensitive, they're going to be like, why do I have a migraine? Why do I have a headache? And they're near these lights that they're picking up on that. So it might not even be something that you're consciously aware of. Like the smell, it might be like, why am I exhausted? I started this new job. Why am I exhausted? When they put new carpeting in where I used to work, I sort of liked the new carpet smell, but I was plowed every day when I got home just from smelling that all day. So whereas someone else might be irritated by it, a neurotypical person, like, well, I smell carpeting all day. It'll just send you into dysregulation and barely being able to function and feeling physically exhausted. Right.
And this is not a choice. I mean, I want to be really clear that this is neurological wiring and input. Yeah. So we know from research actually that autistic brains in particular have less pruning at the neural network level, right?
Yep.
So meaning instead of there being 1 or 2 wires, there might be 10, 20, 40, 50 wires. So that's why the overwhelm can happen so quickly. And that I love this piece that you're highlighting, Dana, which is you can still become fatigued and overwhelmed by doing stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It just means that, you know, you're having to manage way more input, way more information than your neurotypical counterpart, let's just say.
Yeah.
About the same thing. That's why what is irksome and can be habituated for one person is overwhelming and dysregulating for another. And that's not because that's a choice.
Right. Yeah, it really is that kind of Princess and the Pea. For those that don't know that reference, you can have 12 mattresses and there's one little pea under the first one, and a neurodiverse person's going to feel it and then can't tune it out just because they decide to tune it out. Right. In fact, the more you get hooked into it and the more those neural pathways keep firing, the more it gets stuck on that. I had surgery on, I have EDS, as those of you guys, I had surgery on a different hand a couple of years ago, and it was a different spot, and the splint was longer, and I have these bony little, we call them my Tyrannosaurus Rex arms because they're so skinny no matter what I do. So it's these hard plastic splints they give you, and it was just sitting against my skin. It hurt, right? It got to the point where it hurt so bad, even just having the splint on. I remember trying to go to bed one night and just starting to cry because I was like, I can't stop this. I went in the next day, told the therapist, and she said, well, we need to keep you in the splint. We need to keep this still. But what you can do when you're just sitting doing nothing, just take the splint off and just let your arm sit. Like if you're watching TV, just let it be out of the splint. And as soon as she said that, because I teach about this in my neuropsych class, I was like, oh yeah, we're trying to get my brain time away from the stimulus,
right,
so that it can stop perseverating on it. So we know that that's true for every brain, neurodiverse or not. If you have a stimulus like that's painful, the longer it's there, the more your brain will be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And you have to have time without the oh my God for it to stop. And in a neurodivergent person, it was even worse. And I did that. I would just sit there for hours without the splint on. And then sure enough, that night I was able to fall asleep, no problem. But there had to be like this sort of getting away from it and having time to have my brain unhook from it. And if you don't know what your triggers are and you don't know why you're feeling a certain way, again, I go back to kids and people haven't learned or don't know what's going on with them. They are going to go straight from seemingly fine to the observer to having a meltdown. And then, to the outside person, they're like, where did that come from? And it seems to come out of the blue, but it's actually been building for a long time. Right?
Yep. Yeah. And so, and these are unseen things, you guys. Like there's not like a gauge or a valve or something that you can see. This is really back to self-awareness again and how these things impact you. And sometimes there are just things that you can do in your environments where you don't even have to use any bandwidth on it. For me, having a tidy home visually is really important for me. And I just know like a cupboard that's kind of cracked open, and we talked about my own. I tick some of the neurodivergent boxes. But for me, I'm very, very sensitive to visual stimulus. And if things are out of place, I can be, I need to fix it.
You need to fix it. Yeah, totally.
So, like for example, off air, we had a little bit of a funny thing with our taping situation with our overlay. And I just realized, and Dana,
your box
you'd be so proud
smaller.
of me. My box is smaller. And I fought everything to put that aside so that we could tape, and I wasn't going to fix it because inevitably I would try to fix it while we were talking. And then I would have a situation where it was worse. And then we're taping, right? And I really needed to work through that. I mean, in the beginning of our taping in order to put that aside. And I'll fix it later, but
And you're really good at that. Like if we're talking and you say, I just need a second, and I know enough about you now to just stop talking. Like, yeah, fix it. Let's give you some space to fix that.
Yeah.
So it really does sort of
me
fit,
that.
like knowing the person you're with and what they need too can really make a huge difference. Yeah.
Yep. And it's not a big deal, you know, that this happens in my sessions because I see a lot of teenagers and a lot of young adults who are still living with their parents.
Yeah.
And I am a come as you are person. So if we're on Zoom and you don't want your camera on, I'm cool with that. Like, I don't need you squarely looking at me in the box. And that really disturbs a lot of parents, actually, because they're like, then they're not paying attention. I was like, no, actually not. Or if there's something bothering my client, like they're itchy or something, I'll just say, go take care of it.
Go take care
of it.
Yeah.
Right. It will be a 2-minute situation. Go take care of yourself, come back. And then we'll be right back on track again. And that's really bothersome for some neurotypicals. When they're watching this, it doesn't compute for them. And they feel like there is a very specific way in which to do X, Y, and Z. When it's like, that's actually not what this is about. That's not what our work is about.
Exactly. And that my wife is not autistic, but ticks some boxes too. And as you're talking now, I'm just having a realization. Sometimes she'll be in the middle of just texting or doing a Facebook post. And something's really important that I have to tell her. And she'll say, just a second, kind of like you do. But I'm like, could you not have to finish it? Couldn't you go back to it? And I just realized now, I'm like, oh, she does sort of have this completion need. And if her attention gets pulled away, she does have a hard time going back to it. So that's useful to know about other people. I need to be like, and I do. Usually I just wait, but it's been annoying to me in the past. And now I'm like, oh, okay, that's what that is. And now
it's not personal.
I can give more grace to that, and that's what's so helpful about talking about all the stuff and having awareness, not just in you, but in other people too. Giving grace.
Yeah. And you do have to have it with it. You do have to have the knowledge within yourself in order to inform others that it isn't a personal situation. Like I can see that situation turning into, you don't care about me. I'm secondary to your social account. Like whatever that is, when for her, it's like, just give me 1 second to finish this. And then I have undivided attention.
Yeah, exactly.
For you here. So, creating that space is so critical. But the sensory components, which are hidden components, I think are the things that get most overlooked, but yet are some of the biggest culprits of energy draining and irritability and agitation.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%.
So, you guys just don't underestimate the role of the sensory system in your life.
And I've even done where I've done this, and I've taught clients that are new to realizing this to do a inventory. Is something in my vision? Am I smelling something? Is it taste? Is it sound? Is it on my skin? Is it in my sort of balance? I mean, go through all those sensory input things to see if it's something there, so you can identify it, right?
Have you noticed, Dana, more and more ads about sensory-friendly clothing?
I have not, but I'm glad to hear that.
I don't know, and we're not sponsored by anybody. I mean, we'd like to be sponsored by Diet Coke at minimum, but that's beside the point. Even though the Diet Coke, I was telling Dana, has been not friendly on my stomach lately. I don't know what's going on. But I don't know if it's Bombas, but they're who makes those socks, those like really comfy, like give one, buy one, give one.
They don't have a seam.
Right, but they're making T-shirts, and I swear that one of their commercials is without tags for sensory friendly. It's like without tags for sensory friendly T-shirts, something like that.
That's good. And then you can also tell that they haven't really gone to neurodivergent folks to ask about it, because when they do tagless, they paint the tag in there,
which is awful.
Which is worse because you can't
cut it out.
Yeah. So like I order these fun little completion T-shirts for my students every year, and I order from Custom Ink, in case you're listening. And they're great because I put a note in there once, and I said, I ordered them the first time I saw they had tags you can cut out. And then they put a printed tag right underneath it. And I said, can you not do that? These are for sensory folks, and they need to be able to cut the tag out if they want to. And they were awesome about it. They were like, no problem, we won't paint it in there. But when you're buying stuff that's already done, or like Bombas or something like that, like we just went to load up on Husky gear a couple of days ago, and I couldn't get any of the t-shirts because they're all painted now. It's like, damn it, there wasn't one in there that I could get and cut the tags out. So I bought 3 sweatshirts instead, which is fine. But that knowing those things about yourself, and that whatever company's doing that, give them feedback. Maybe Bombas needs to know the painted tag isn't always great, or if you're going to paint the tag, put it somewhere where it's not going to rub. Like I've noticed sometimes they put the tag just where the bottom of the t-shirt lands on your pants. You're not going to feel that. Put it somewhere where it's not going to be intrusive.
Absolutely.
Give feedback. You'd be surprised. There's been a lot of foods that I've longed for that weren't in gluten-free form, and the gluten-free community has lobbied, and companies have said, okay, it's expensive to make this, but we're going to try it. You got to buy it. And they have. People have bought it, and they're like, great. And that's where we see this big ballooning of gluten-free foods now. It wasn't like that before. So yes, give feedback and let it be known. And not just neurodivergent people appreciate those soft fabrics, not your itchy tags and things like that.
I mean, we should do an episode on how neurotypical people benefit from the disability community. Because there are lots of things in our community that neurotypical people take for granted that are there because of the disability community.
That's right.
And so this is a really but advocate again. Know what's good. Advocate, give feedback. Like how do we ride that? But the sensory pieces it's just a hidden component that. I don't know. Like if I were to redo the DSM, I'd probably add those two.
Yeah.
I would
have it more prominent.
Have it more prominent.
More,
Not just because I think what the DSM focuses on is repetition. Is the stereotypic repetition or stimming, when that's not necessarily the piece. So
because that's what they say is pathological and needs to be extinguished, is the visible stimming,
which is a problem. Like we've talked about this before. Please do not stop people's stims when they're not harmful. By the way, I mean obviously Dana and I are down for harmful stimming, and there's harmful stimming out there.
Yep, there is
that we are not down for. But stimming that's not harming, let's knock that right out, please.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
I got the most glorious.
Everyone. Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to be able to hear
Ooh, that's a fidget spinner. Is that a fidget spinner ring?
Yeah, it's and I found this on darn it, not Tiva, Temu.
Temu, the Temu or whatever, TMU. I see that all the time.
Yeah. So we had a knob on our washing machine that had the most glorious. When you'd spin it, it would make that kind of. And then of course I got a new washing machine. I was loathing the day I didn't get that damn thing out of the washing machine. So I've searched high and low. What's so great about these is they have slightly different rings, and they have magnets inside that you can put in or take out depending on the kind of click you want. Do you want it to have a lot of resistance? I have one of these that has no magnet, so it just spins, and then this one's just the right amount of. So they're listening, and this person that has this on that site, I don't know if they're neurodivergent or not, but they mark it in that the user can customize it, and that's got to be from getting feedback.
Totally,
it's so awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So find ways to stim, and everybody. And I gave it to my wife, and she spun it. She's like, "That's so satisfying." I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. That's the whole idea." Yeah,
for sure. Take care of yourself,
is a
everyone.
Way of dealing with sensitivity.
Absolutely, it's regulating and organizing. That's what people need to. When we reframe stimming as regulating and organizing, instead of pathological and dysfunctional, we tend to see that it's serving a purpose and a function that's good for the person. So we don't want to stop those things.
That's right.
All right, everyone. As Dana says, be good to you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Jomo. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to end off with Jomo.
Different episode.
Well,
if missing out.
By the way, if you didn't know what JOMO was, it means that you didn't watch our episode right before this one. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Watch that one.
Watch that one. All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Everybody.
Bye.